When I was 13 years old, my family was very wealthy. We went on vacations all the time. We lived in a $3 million mansion. We had very expensive cars. Pretty much had it all. From an outsider's point of view, we were pretty much killing it. When I was 15, we didn't own a car. I had to ride my bicycle to go to the store after gathering up change for dinner. We got eviction notices on our doors. We didn't have any money. We struggled to pay the bills every month. The electricity would get cut off, the power would get cut off. There would be a bunch of financial struggles from around that time in my life. How does something like this happen? How, within a span of 2 years, can you go from living a life of abundance and wealth and vacations and cars and mansions to just 2 years later not even owning a car, and your source of transportation is a bicycle, and you're getting eviction notices and you can't afford to pay the bills? How does this happen within a span of 2 years? Just a little backstory real quick, just for anybody who's wondering how the money was made. Both my mother and my father started and sold a few successful companies from around the late 90s to maybe 2010, around there. I don't know the specifics, but it was around there. I know they first started in the late 90s and they sold a company for 30 million in around that time, and then they sold one later for I think 15. I'm not 100% sure, but what I am sure about is they had fucking money, dude. I mean, there was money for days. In the video, I'll show the mansions that I lived in. I'll show some of the cars. There was a bunch of cool shit, right? But it's definitely important to examine a little deeper for anyone who's wondering how you could lose that much money and have such a drastic change in lifestyle so quickly. So yeah, that's just a very general perspective of my family's financial history. And I think if we want to examine things and figure out what went wrong, we're going to have to go a little deeper. To do this, I'm going to mostly focus on my father because I believe that he was the main reason for the downfall of my family's abundant lifestyle. My dad didn't really have a good relationship with anybody. He wasn't a very... By the way, I'm just going to have to mention this real quick. I'm sorry. But if there's anybody who hasn't watched any of my videos before and you're curious why my eyes are going all crazy, I am not on Molly. I'm not on drugs. I was born with an eye condition that makes my eyes move around all the time. So the condition's called nystagmus. I actually have a podcast for it called the Dancing Eyes Podcast. I'm going to have that linked in my bio. But I don't want that to be a distraction from the main focus on this video, because I think there's a lot of important lessons to be learned from this video. So anyway, to proceed here, my dad didn't have a good relationship with anybody. He didn't have a good relationship with himself. He wasn't a very loving guy. He was a very closed off guy. And I don't believe that he ever really learned how to love or care for other people on an emotional level. And I think that the lack of this deep relationship can have a detrimental effect on somebody's life. And I think that that's exactly what happened with him. I view the connection that people have with others to be the main source of meaning in somebody's life. And my father did not have this. And he filled this lack of meaning in his life with things that made him feel good, which to anybody who's thought it out a little bit can be an easy cause of addiction, and that's what happened. My dad became addicted to spending. He bought massive houses, bought expensive cars. He took the family on crazy vacations. He did whatever he could to kind of like fill this void in his heart and his life. And I don't think he was ever like really educated on it, like he never learned how to love. He never learned how to care for other people. And he did it to the best of his abilities, but it's just a recipe for disaster, and disaster was written all over this man's life. Anyway, later on in his life, he ended up getting addicted to painkillers, and he was pretty much high all of the time. And then, eventually his mom died, and that really had a major effect on him. And the spending got worse, the addiction got worse, and his mental health got worse. And, things just started kind of escalating. And then one day my mom sat my sister and I down and said that she was going to take him and get him some help, and that she was going to send him over to a facility where he was going to be there for a little bit, and he was going to recover from his addiction, and he just had some mental stuff that he had to get over. And at the time I was 13, my sister was 13, we're twins, so we don't know so much about mental health, and we don't know how bad the spending is, we don't know how bad the addiction is, we really don't know much about this guy's life. But anyway, a couple weeks after that, my mom sits my sister and I down again to inform us that he had died. And the cause of death that she told us was that he had overdosed on the painkillers. Because you can't tell a 13-year-old that their father just killed himself, like, you can't do that. And I think that she did it the right way. It wasn't until a few years later that I discovered that he had killed himself. I kind of started to put things together. As a 13-year-old, I didn't really know what suicide even was. I didn't really think much about it. I didn't consider that he had taken his life. It just made sense that he had accidentally taken too many pills and died. So I didn't consider that. And it wasn't until years later where I was like, oh, he was really depressed, and there was a bunch of shit going on, and he killed himself. And then, so I found out that that's what happened. Immediately following my dad's death, nobody really knew how bad the financial situation was. Like, I had no reason to believe that we were no longer wealthy. There was nothing that implied that this was a drastic change in my reality. I did not see it coming. My sister didn't see it coming. My mom, I'm sure, knew a lot more about it than we did, and she tried her best to keep our heads up and be strong and, keep moving forward. But I mean, this flipped our whole world upside down, and it certainly flipped her world upside down, and just things were different. We moved out of the mansion immediately. We sold it immediately. Now, in my eyes, I think in everybody, like in my sister's eyes, like, we moved out of this mansion because my dad had just died in there, and we didn't want to live in the same house that he had died in anyway. So regardless of the financial situation, we were going to move out anyway. So that to us, that didn't really have anything to do with money. Now, I'm sure it did have to do with money. It's just, as a 13-year-old who doesn't really know much, we moved out of there ASAP. We moved into a smaller house, got rid of all the expensive cars. We really just sold everything. We sold pretty much all of our possessions, got rid of as much stuff as we could. And then fast forward a couple of years, and we didn't really have anything. For the first time in my life, money was an issue. We couldn't pay our bills. The electricity was getting turned off. There were a couple eviction notices on our doors, which thankfully we ended up getting everything paid, and never got evicted out of our house. We ended up losing all of our cars. We literally didn't have a car for 6 months or so, maybe a little longer. I would ride my bicycle to the store to go pick up food. Just a massive lifestyle change, man. Just completely different, and this is only 2 years later. I was 15 at the time. My dad died when I was 13. So just think about it, from my perspective, man. 2 years ago, we're on, like a 30-day vacation in Thailand. I come back home to this massive mansion. I've been going to a $20,000 a year private school for my whole life. And just, and 2 years later, we don't have anything. My dad left us in tremendous debt. He left us, I don't know exactly how much debt he left us in, but he left us in a lot of debt, and we had to sell pretty much as much stuff as we could. And actually, I just pulled out this American Express Black card over here, by the way, which this thing if you if you don't have control over yourself, this thing is dangerous, man. I'm pretty sure, I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure this thing is unlimited, so you could put whatever whatever you want on here. So this was not a good, my dad did not have a very healthy relationship with this card. This thing has been expired for a long time, so yeah, didn't have a very good relationship with that card, and I'm sure that this helped a lot with the debt. That was pretty much the broadest way that I feel comfortable in explaining kind of what happened here. I could get super into detail. Like if somebody's asking me questions, I'm down to answer whatever questions. And I'm going to be making a bunch more videos about what I've learned from this drastic change in lifestyle. And I have so many takeaways from this life experience. But I think in this video, I'll name the biggest takeaway that I have, and I'll get into other stuff in future videos. And I would say that the biggest takeaway that I have had from this experience is that the connection that you have with the people in your life is far more important than the amount of money that you have in your bank account. I saw a poll on YouTube a couple of years ago, and it said something like this. I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't know exactly what it said. It was just so long ago. But it was something like, would you rather have $5 million in your bank account, or would you rather have the perfect relationship with somebody else? And the answers really surprised me. It was like 80% would say that they want $5 million, and 20% said that they want the perfect relationship. And you know what? I don't blame the people who picked the money. Like, I'm sure based off of the life experience that they have had, that is the correct answer. But to me, in my experience, I would most certainly pick the perfect relationship. I have seen a man with millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, more money than you would know what to do with, and I have seen his life fall apart due to the lack of relationship that he had with the people in his life. And I wish more people kind of like had that perspective and were aware about that. But if this video can help in any way get that information into people's head, then I think that this would be a success. Money, like, I really don't think that money means anything if you don't have the capability of loving. Have $15 million in the bank account, right? Just have $15 million. But if you don't love somebody, what are you going to do with that money? You can't do anything with it, man. If anything, that money will be detrimental to you, and it will lead to your demise sooner than your demise would be if you didn't have money. That money will literally will speed up the process of the falling apart of your life. So don't put money on a pedestal, man. It's really, I mean, it's a cool thing to have, but it's seriously not that important. The cool cars, the mansions, it's all cool and all, but it's not the goal. It's not the goal. And if you think that it's the goal, then I really disagree with you. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry if you think that is more important than it actually is. Yeah, that's this video. I'm going to be posting a new video on this channel every week. At one point I did 5 videos a week. That was too much. I have other things, and I want my videos to actually have quality, and I don't want to compromise quality for quantity. So I'm going to do 1 video a week, and I have a bunch more takeaways from all of this shit with my dad, and I'm going to talk about it in future videos. So yeah, this is just a general depiction of what happened. Yeah, so in future videos on this channel, I'll go in depth into the other things that I've learned from my father's life, and I'm going to try to hit on as many things as I can, because there's a lot of important stuff that I've learned from this, and I think there's some really valuable stuff, and it would be a shame of me to not share this with the world. So yeah, if you're interested in seeing some of the other things that I've learned, hit that subscribe button. I'll have new videos every week, and yeah. My name's Frankie Caputo. I'll be back next week.